Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, welcome to the failure zone. Sounds uncomfortable, doesn't it? See, we live in a world that glorifies success but hides failure. We celebrate the victories, the achievements, the awards, but we rarely talk about the stumbles, the mistakes, the sleepless nights filled with doubt. Every great achievement is built on a foundation of failures. If you want to win big, you have to fail big. That statement might sound harsh, even counterintuitive, but it's a fundamental truth that many of us try to avoid. We live in a society that loves winners, those who come out on top, who get the trophy, the applause, the recognition. And while there's nothing wrong with celebrating victory, what we often fail to realize is that success doesn't come without its struggles. It's not handed to you on a silver platter. There's no shortcut to greatness. Instead, it's earned by those who are willing to step into the arena of failure, face the heat, and keep going despite the setbacks. The first thing we have to acknowledge is that failure is not a sign of weakness or incompetence. It's not something to be ashamed of, though so many of us treat it as if it's the end of the world. We fear failure, and with good reason. It hurts. It feels like rejection, like a public display of our shortcomings. But in reality, failure is a teacher. It's a necessary part of the process. You cannot succeed without it, because failure is how we learn, how we evolve, how we find our way to success. Look at any person who has accomplished something extraordinary, whether it's in business, sports, art, or any other field, and you'll see a trail of failures that paved the way to their success. These people didn't arrive at their achievements by walking a straight line. No, they fell, they stumbled, they made mistakes that set them back, and they did it all over again, refusing to be defeated by the very thing that most of us run from. They learned from their failures, adapted, and kept pushing forward. Take Thomas Edison, for example. We all know him for inventing the light bulb, but what's less talked about is the countless failures he endured in the process. It's said that Edison failed more than 1,000 times before he succeeded. 1,000 times, and yet he famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 1,000 ways that won't work." Imagine if he had given up after his first failure, or his 10th, or even his 100th. We would have never had the electric light that changed the world. Edison's success wasn't built on avoiding failure. It was built on the perseverance to keep going in the face of failure. Or think about Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players of all time. He was cut from his high school basketball team. Imagine that. Michael Jordan, cut from the team. He could have let that define him. He could have allowed it to be the end of his story. But instead, he used it as fuel. He practiced harder, worked on his weaknesses, and rose above that failure to become a global icon in the sport. His success wasn't handed to him. It was forged through rejection, through being told no, through the pain of not being good enough. But he learned, he improved, and he became one of the best to ever play the game. Failure also plays a crucial role in the creative process. Artists, musicians, writers, they all know that the path to great work is littered with failure. You can look at the drafts of a writer's first book, the rough cuts of a director's first film, or the early paintings of a famous artist, and you'll find mistakes, imperfections, flaws. Yet those failures are not something to be discarded. They are the stepping stones that lead to mastery. Every failed attempt refines the process, sharpens the skills, and brings the artist closer to their vision. Without those failures, there would be no progress, no growth, no masterpiece. Even in business, failure is essential. Look at the stories of entrepreneurs who started from the ground up. Steve Jobs, for instance, was ousted from the company he founded, Apple. That failure was a crushing blow to his ego, but it was also a transformative experience. He didn't give up. Instead, he started over, learned from his mistakes, and eventually returned to Apple, leading it to become one of the most valuable companies in the world. Jobs' story is a testament to the power of failure, how it can break you, but if you allow it, it can also make you stronger, wiser, and more prepared for what comes next. Failure teaches you lessons that success never can. It teaches you resilience, humility, perseverance, and adaptability. When you fail, you're forced to confront your weaknesses and ask yourself tough questions. What went wrong? What can I do better? How can I approach this differently next time? These are the kinds of questions that lead to growth. Without failure, there's no room to learn, no opportunity to become better. It's like trying to climb a mountain without ever stumbling or sliding back a few feet. You'll never gain the strength to reach the top. Every misstep, every time you fall, is part of the process of building the strength and knowledge you need to climb higher. The reality is, if you want to win big, you have to fail big. The stakes are higher when you aim for greatness. The bigger the goal, the greater the challenges, and the more likely it is that you'll face failure along the way. But here's the thing: failure isn't a dead end. It's a detour. It's a sign that you're pushing your limits, that you're reaching for something beyond your comfort zone. It means you're daring to do something that matters. And that's the only kind of failure worth having, the kind that happens because you were willing to go all in, to risk it all, to try something new. So embrace failure. Don't fear it. Don't let it paralyze you. Let it push you. Let it teach you. Let it be the fire that forges your success. Because in the end, every great achievement is not just built on the triumphs, but on the countless failures that came before it. And if you're going to win big, you better get ready to fail big. When you fail, don't let it define you. Let it refine you. Learn, grow, and keep moving forward. This mindset is one of the most powerful tools you can develop in your life, yet it's something many people struggle to grasp. Failure has a way of knocking us down, often making us feel like we're not good enough, that we'll never succeed, or that maybe we should give up altogether. But if we allow it to define us, we become prisoners of our own setbacks, trapped in a cycle of regret, self-doubt, and fear. Instead of becoming overwhelmed by failure, we need to use it as an opportunity for growth, an opportunity to refine ourselves, our skills, and our mindset. It's easy to get caught up in the negative emotions that come with failure. When things don't go as planned, when the result is not what we envision, we can feel frustrated, embarrassed, or even defeated. Our immediate reaction might be to want to hide, to avoid the situation, or to run from the uncomfortable truth that we didn't succeed. The sting of failure is real, and it's important to acknowledge it. However, the key to overcoming it is in how we choose to respond. When we experience failure, we need to remember that it's a natural part of life. No one is immune to it. In fact, the most successful people in the world have faced failure more times than most can count. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't that one group never failed. It's that the successful group didn't let failure stop them. They didn't allow it to define who they were or what they could achieve. Instead, they saw each failure as an opportunity to grow stronger, wiser, and more capable. Refining yourself in the face of failure means taking the time to reflect on what went wrong without letting it destroy your sense of self-worth. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that because we failed, we're somehow unworthy or incapable. But failing at something doesn't make you a failure. It simply means you tried and fell short in that particular moment. It means you were brave enough to put yourself out there, to challenge yourself, and to take risks. The only true failure comes when you stop trying, when you quit before giving yourself the chance to improve. So instead of letting failure define you, take it as a lesson. Ask yourself what you can learn from it. Learning from failure requires honesty. You have to be willing to take a hard look at the situation, at your actions, at what worked and what didn't. It's not about blaming yourself or others, but rather about identifying areas where you can grow. Maybe you need to develop a new skill, or maybe your approach needs to be adjusted. Maybe it's a mindset shift where you need to reframe the way you think about setback. The key is not to avoid failure, but to approach it as a valuable teacher. It's telling you something. Whether it's pointing out a weakness, revealing a flaw in your strategy, or showing you that the path you've chosen needs tweaking. If you allow yourself to learn from failure, you come out the other side better equipped to handle future challenges. Growth is a process. It doesn't happen overnight, and it certainly doesn't happen without setbacks. Setbacks, but that's the beauty of it. Every time you fail and then bounce back, you're building resilience, you're expanding your capacity to handle adversity, and as you grow, you learn more about your strengths and weaknesses, about what truly matters to you, and about how much you're capable of. The person you are at the end of a failure is often far more refined than the person you were at the beginning. And you've learned lessons that only come through experience. You've faced adversity and emerged stronger. It's important to remember that growth doesn't happen in isolation. You don't have to go through failure alone. In fact, some of the most valuable lessons come from reaching out for support, seeking feedback from others, and learning from their experiences. Sometimes the greatest way to refine yourself after failure is by sharing your story with others and hearing their perspectives. You might find that others have faced similar challenges and have overcome them. You might even learn strategies or ways of thinking that you hadn't considered before. Failure can often be a shared experience, and the people who surround you can play a huge role in your ability to move forward. Moving forward after failure can feel like the hardest part, especially when you're dealing with a major setback or a situation that feels like a personal defeat. But the most important thing you can do is to keep moving. Don't stay stuck in a place of self-pity or regret. You have to be willing to get back up, to try again, and to keep pushing forward. That doesn't mean rushing the process or pretending that everything is fine when it's not. But it does mean not letting failure hold you hostage. You may need time to heal, to reflect, and to plan your next move. But don't ever stop moving toward your goals. Each time you get up after a failure, you prove to yourself that you're stronger than you think, that you're capable of more than you ever imagined. The road to success is rarely a straight line, and setbacks are inevitable. But if you keep moving forward, if you keep refining yourself through each failure, you'll find that you're capable of far more than you ever thought possible. With every setback, you refine your skills, your understanding, and your character. If you don't, you become better not because you never fail, but because you learn how to rise above it. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't whether they fail, it's how they respond to failure. Do they let it define them, or do they let it refine them? Every time you face failure, you have a choice. You can let it be the end of your story, or you can use it as the fuel to push forward, to grow, and to become the best version of yourself. So don't be afraid of failure. Don't let it define you. Let it refine you. Learn from it, grow from it, and most importantly, keep moving forward. Too many people never start because they're afraid to fail, but playing it safe is the biggest risk of all. We've all heard the saying, better safe than sorry, and in many situations, it holds value. But when it comes to pursuing your dreams, your passions, and your purpose in life, playing it safe is one of the most dangerous things you can do. Fear of failure keeps people stuck in a place of comfort, preventing them from ever realizing their full potential. It convinces them that the risk of trying is greater than the cost of not trying. And in doing so, it robs them of the chance to grow, to evolve, and to experience life at its fullest. Fear of failure is a powerful force. It can paralyze you, making you question your abilities and your worth. It's the voice in your head that says, what if I'm not good enough? Or what if I fail? It convinces you that failing is something to be avoided at all costs, and it can keep you from taking that first step toward something new. It's easy to get trapped in this mindset because failure does hurt. It feels like a personal rejection, like you're not cut out for success. But here's the truth. Failure is not something to be feared. It's something to be embraced. It's part of the process. In fact, it's one of the greatest teachers you'll ever have. But the fear of failure keeps many people from even trying. They let it dictate their decisions, keeping them in their comfort zone where things feel safe and predictable. And here's the thing, staying in your comfort zone isn't safe at all. In fact, it's the riskiest thing you can do. Playing it safe means you're never pushing yourself to grow, to learn, or to discover what you're truly capable of. It means you're settling for mediocrity because the fear of failure outweighs your desire for greatness. And let me tell you, that's a dangerous place to be. When you choose to play it safe, you're choosing to live in a world of missed opportunities. You're choosing to avoid the unknown, the uncertainty, and the challenge of stepping into something that could change your life. But the truth is, life is uncertain. There's no guarantee of success, no foolproof plan that will ensure everything goes smoothly. But that's the beauty of it. The unknown is where the magic happens. The risks you take, the challenges you face, and the failures you encounter are what shape you into the person you were meant to be. If you never take the leap, if you never face the fear of failure head on, you'll never know what you're truly capable of. Think about it. All the greatest achievements in history were once considered risks. No one could guarantee that Thomas Edison's light bulb would work. No one could guarantee that the Wright brothers' airplane would fly. No one could guarantee that Steve Jobs' vision for Apple would revolutionize the tech industry. These innovators, these dreamers, took risks. They were willing to fail, and because they were willing to fail, they also had the opportunity to succeed. They didn't play it safe. They didn't let the fear of failure stop them from trying. They took that first step, not knowing what would happen, but trusting that the journey was worth it. If you never take that first step, you'll never know what could have been. You'll live with regret, wondering what if for the rest of your life. The fear of failure will hold you back, and eventually you'll realize that the real risk wasn't in failing, it was in never trying. The real danger is in not giving yourself the chance to fail, to learn, and to grow. Because without those experiences, you'll never know the full extent of what you could have achieved. You'll never experience the fulfillment that comes from pushing yourself beyond your limits. Yes, failure is hard. Yes, it can sting. But it's in those moments of failure that you learn the most about yourself. It's in the struggle that you grow stronger, more resilient, and more determined. If you never fail, you'll never know what it feels like to rise again, to overcome obstacles, and to prove to yourself that you are capable of far more than you realize. The fear of failure keeps you from experiencing that growth, that sense of accomplishment, and that feeling of pride that comes with achieving something that once seemed impossible. In reality, the biggest risk you can take is the risk of never trying at all. So the biggest danger is to play it safe, to stay in your comfort zone and to never push yourself toward the life you truly want. Life is short, and every day you spend avoiding the risk of failure is another day spent in mediocrity. The risk of never trying is far greater than the risk of failing. Because failing means you're moving forward, you're growing, and you're learning. It means you're doing something, but playing it safe means you're stagnant. It means you're stuck. It means you're not living life to its fullest potential. So the next time fear of failure creeps in, Remember this, it's not the failure that's dangerous, it's the avoidance of it. The greatest risk in life is never giving yourself the chance to fail, never giving yourself the opportunity to rise above. The only way to truly succeed is to be willing to fail, is to embrace the unknown, to take chances, and to trust that the journey is worth the risk. Because when you choose to play it safe, you're choosing to let fear control your life. And when you let fear control your life, you'll never know what could have been. The biggest risk is playing it safe. Take the leap, dare to fail, and in doing so, dare to live. Failure is only a lesson if you take something from it. Every failure should push you one step closer to your goal. This is a powerful truth that many people overlook when they face setbacks. When failure strikes, it's easy to get consumed by the disappointment, frustration, or even embarrassment of not achieving what you set out to do. You might feel like giving up, or worse, you might feel like you're not cut out for the task at all. But the reality is that failure is one of the most valuable tools you have on the journey to success. The key is in how you respond to it, how you allow it to shape you, and how you use it to grow stronger, wiser, and more capable. The first thing to understand is that failure is not an end. It's not the point where the story stops. It's simply a part of the process, a step on the path that you must walk in order to reach your destination. The important question to ask yourself when you fail is not, why did this happen, or why did I fail, but rather, what can I learn from this? What can I take from this experience that will help me move forward? Failure is a mirror. It shows you what's working and what isn't, and if you're willing to look deeply enough, it reveals areas where you need to improve, areas where you need to adjust your approach, and sometimes areas where you need to let go of things that are no longer serving you. The truth is, every failure contains within it the seeds of your future success. It may not feel like it in the moment, but the lessons learned in times of failure are what make the final achievement possible. Think about a child learning to walk. The first steps are wobbly, unsure, and often followed by falls. But the child doesn't stop trying after one fall, or two, or three. Each failure is a small piece of feedback that brings them closer to walking. They learn to balance, to find their footing, to adjust their movements. And with each failed attempt, they get a little bit closer to success. This is the way it works with everything in life. The more you fail, the more you learn, and the more you refine your skills, your strategies, and your mindset. Failure pushes you forward if you allow it to. However, the mistake many people make is to let failure be the end of the road rather than the lesson that it truly is. It's all too easy to wallow in the negative emotions that come with failure, to get stuck in self-pity, and to let the experience define you. If you do this, you miss out on the opportunities that failure offers. You turn a temporary setback into a permanent roadblock, when in reality, failure is just a detour, a chance to reevaluate your course and learn how to get back on track. To turn failure into a lesson, you must shift your perspective. Instead of seeing failure as something to avoid or something that proves you're not good enough, start seeing it as a valuable part of the learning process. Every successful person has faced failure at some point, and they didn't get to where they are by avoiding it. They got there by embracing it, learning from it, and using it as a stepping stone toward their goals. Every failure holds an insight, a lesson that, if learned, will make you stronger and more prepared for what comes next. The key to this process is taking action. Simply acknowledging that failure is a lesson is not enough. You need to actively engage with the failure, analyze it, and determine what can be learned. It's not about beating yourself up or replaying every mistake over and over in your mind. Instead, it's about focusing on the growth that can come from the experience. Ask yourself, what worked? What didn't work. Why didn't it work? What can I do differently next time? What can I improve on? This process is how you transform failure into a tool for progress. It's how you ensure that every failure pushes you closer to your goal. Sometimes failure teaches you what not to do. It shows you the things that hold you back, the strategies that don't work, and the habits that need to change. Other times it teaches you more about yourself, about your strengths, your weaknesses, and the areas where you need to grow. Failure can reveal what you're truly made of, because it's in those moments when you're at your lowest that your true character shines through. Do you give up, or do you keep fighting? Do you let the failure define you, or do you use it to redefine yourself? And remember, failure doesn't always look like a huge dramatic event. Sometimes it's small things, missed opportunities, little mistakes, or moments of doubt that pile up and lead to frustration. But even these small failures hold immense value. They accumulate and teach you valuable lessons that you might miss if you're only focused on the big wins. Sometimes you need to take a step back and reflect on the smaller setbacks in order to understand what's really standing in your way. And in doing so, you'll see how each of those small failures is actually bringing you closer to your larger goal. Another important point is that failure helps you build resilience. Every time you face a setback and overcome it, you grow stronger. You develop the mental toughness to keep going even when things are hard. Resilience is an essential quality for anyone who wants to achieve greatness, and failure is the crucible in which resilience is forged. Every time you pick yourself up after a failure, you're strengthening your ability to handle whatever comes next. So in that sense, failure isn't just teaching you what went wrong, it's teaching you how to become a more resilient, capable person. Ultimately, failure is only a lesson if you allow it to be. If you refuse to learn from it, if you let it break you instead of building you, then it will hold you back. But if you can shift your mindset, if you can embrace failure as a tool for growth, then every failure you encounter becomes one step closer to your goal. Failure doesn't make you weaker, it makes you stronger. It doesn't stop you, it propels you forward. The important thing is to keep going, to keep learning, and to keep moving closer to your dreams, one lesson at a time. The greatest athletes, the greatest minds, the greatest leaders, they all spend time in the failure zone. That's where resilience is built, where greatness is born. Too often we look at these extraordinary individuals and only see the final product, the victory, the breakthrough, the moment when their brilliance shone through. We celebrate their successes without considering the countless hours they spent in the trenches of failure, struggling, learning, and overcoming obstacles. But it is precisely in that failure zone where their true growth happened. It is through their failures that they developed the mental toughness, the resilience, and the character that propelled them to greatness. We tend to idolize successful people, placing them on a pedestal and believing they are somehow different from the rest of us. We think they were born with something special, a unique gift or talent that led them to where they are. And while talent certainly plays a role, it's the time they spent in the failure zone that truly sets them apart. It's easy to forget that every successful person has faced rejection, disappointment, and failure. But what separates the extraordinary from the ordinary is how they respond to those failures. They don't let it defeat them, they let it drive them. They don't see failure as an end, but as a part of the process, a necessary step on the road to greatness. Think about athletes who have reached the pinnacle of their sport. They don't get there by avoiding failure. The most accomplished athletes, those who break records, who dominate their fields, spend years training, failing, learning from their mistakes, and then trying again. They push their bodies and minds to the limit, knowing full well that failure is part of the journey. Every missed shot, every lost game, every time they fall short of their goal, they learn something. They adjust their strategy, they refine their technique, and they come back stronger. The great athletes are the ones who spend the most time in the failure zone because they know that's where true growth happens. They don't shy away from failure, they embrace it. They understand that failure is where they learn, where they sharpen their skills, and where they become more resilient. The same is true for the greatest minds in history. Think about the inventors, the scientists, the thinkers who have changed the world. People like Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein, and Marie Curie didn't stumble upon their breakthroughs by avoiding failure. Edison famously failed thousands of times before he successfully invented the light bulb. Einstein faced immense challenges in his early academic career, and many of his ideas were initially met with skepticism, but they didn't let those failures define them. They used each failure as a stepping stone toward their success. Each failure brought them closer to their discoveries. They spent years in the failure zone, constantly experimenting, constantly learning, constantly pushing the boundaries of what was possible, and in doing so, they achieved greatness. The same applies to the greatest leaders in history. Whether it's political leaders, business leaders, or social leaders, the most impactful individuals didn't rise to the top by avoiding failure. They faced challenges, opposition, and setbacks. They made mistakes. They faced rejection. They stumbled and fell along the way. But what set them apart was their resilience. They didn't quit. They didn't let failure stop them. They took those failures, learned from them, and kept moving forward. Leadership is not about never failing. It's about how you handle failure. The best leaders show up time and time again, even when the odds are stacked against them. They know that true leadership is forged in adversity. They understand that the failure zone is where they build their strength, their conviction, and their ability to inspire others. Resilience is the common thread among all great individuals. It's the ability to bounce back from failure, to keep going when things get tough, and to use every setback as an opportunity for growth. And resilience is not something that comes naturally. It's something that is built over time in the crucible of failure. Every time you fail and choose to rise again, you build your resilience. Every time you get knocked down but refuse to stay down, you become stronger. And every time you gain, it's in those moments of struggle, when everything feels uncertain and the path ahead seems unclear, that your character is shaped. The failure zone is not a place to be feared or avoided. It's a place to be embraced. It's where you grow, where you transform, and where you develop the resilience needed to achieve greatness. Greatness isn't achieved by avoiding challenges. It's achieved by facing them head on, by stepping into the failure zone and using each failure as a lesson. The most successful individuals understand this. They know that failure is not something to be ashamed of or something to avoid. It's a necessary part of the process. Every great achievement, every breakthrough, every success has been built on the foundation of failure. The difference between those who achieve greatness and those who don't is how they respond to failure. Do they let it defeat them, or do they use it to fuel their growth? When you spend time in the failure zone, you begin to understand that failure is not the end. It's just the beginning. It's the start of a new chapter, a new opportunity to learn, to adapt, and to grow. Every failure brings you closer to your goal because every failure teaches you something you didn't know before. It reveals weaknesses that need to be strengthened, gaps that need to be filled, and areas where you can improve. The key is to take what you've learned and apply it, to get back up after every fall, and to keep pushing forward. The greatest athletes, the greatest minds, and the greatest leaders all spent time in the failure zone. And it's that time spent failing, learning, and growing that led them to their ultimate success. So, if you find yourself in the failure zone, don't be discouraged. Don't see it as a sign that you're not capable or that success is out of reach. Instead, embrace it. Know that it is in these moments of struggle that your resilience is being built, that your greatness is being born. Every setback is a lesson. Every failure is a step forward. Keep moving through the failure zone and remember that the road to greatness is paved with resilience, perseverance, and the willingness to fail and try again. Because every time you fail, you're learning. Every time you fall, you're growing. Every time you struggle, you're getting stronger, but only if you refuse to give up. Michael Jordan missed over 9,000 shots in his career. Oprah was told she wasn't fit for television. Steve Jobs got fired from his own company. They all lived in the failure zone before they reached greatness. So the question is, now will you fail? The question is, what will you do when you fail? Will you quit? Will you let fear define you? Or will you get back up, dust yourself off, and try again? I'm here to tell you, embrace failure. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because the people who win in life, the ones who make history, the ones who inspire the world, they are the ones who refuse to let failure have the last word. So go out there, dream big, work hard, take risks, and when you fall, and you will fall forward, because your greatest success is waiting for you right here in the failure zone. Thank you.